It really is about what are the opportunities that might exist internally and externally to the organization? And then what can I do ahead of time, inclusive of, I know I'm going to have an issue, so how am I going to respond? Who am I going to contact? Who do I ask for help? How do I leverage my tools? It's, like they say in combat, every plan on paper works perfectly until you engage with the enemy.
Expect to be surprised.
Expect to be surprised.
Welcome back to CEO Tech Live. I'm your host, Ben Fanning, and we've got a treat coming your way today. This episode's brought to you by Hexaware. We've got Jonathan Shough, who is the Chief Information Officer at Parexel, the biopharmaceutical outsourcing company that happens to be one of the largest clinical research companies in the world. They have over 20,000 employees, $3 billion in revenue. And Jonathan has been also served as president of Novara Technology, LabCorp Drug Development, Quintiles, and IBM. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, man. I've enjoyed digging into your background. We have a good episode today. So let's kick this off. Over the years, what's been your biggest source of inspiration, and what's a difficult time it got you through?
It's an interesting question, especially thinking about leadership, who's been inspiring, who's been influential. I think in my case, it was really learning from others that I've worked for over the years. One, that thinking is working too. And I use that as an example for a lot of young people coming into the organization, because a lot of times we forget that doing better sometimes includes taking a beat, taking some time to think about your long term, but also taking the time to think about what it is you want to tactically accomplish. So to me, I've always tried to use that as inspiration to really remember that you have to really do some thinking in your work too.
Yeah, thinking is working too. In other words, like I think about busyness and how we can just busy ourselves as leaders or anywhere in the organization. That thinking it sounds like that's also being proactive in how you approach things.
Absolutely. All too often, I think, we see folks that are working long hours. They're doing emails in times of the day when you think, why would they be doing emails? And I think a lot of times that's people just being overwhelmed and not thinking about, how do I plan better? How do I think about my calendar in a better context that gives myself some time back? But also thinking about the long term and the strategies that are going to be important to the work that you're doing, whether you're the CEO or you're, just joining out of college doing development work. You really want to think about what are the things that I really want to think about spending my time and how I spend my time so that I can use that as an exercise, if you will.
Well, it's interesting thinking about that when it comes to security, information, and technology, because there's always data coming in. It'd be very easy to busy yourself and I think about being proactive versus reactive. And in your business, it's so easy to probably be reactive, like reacting to cyber threats, reacting to new information coming in.
Oh, absolutely.
So what are you doing in this information-rich, threat-rich world to be proactive and make space for the thinking?
Anxiety medications are really good. But I think a lot of that, to your point, the number of vectors and the opportunities to be overwhelmed are just hard to imagine. And I think even in the context of thinking is working too, it really is about what are the opportunities that might exist internally and externally to the organization? And then what can I do ahead of time, inclusive of, I know I'm going to have an issue, so how am I going to respond? Who am I going to contact? Who do I ask for help? How do I leverage my tools? And importantly, what's going to happen when somebody comes and talks to me about the issue? How do I react to that? So in that context, it also works because it's also about planning for the eventuality that we can't outsmart every vector. So how are we going to react to it? If you wait until you're in the soup, it's going to be really difficult. Could be really embarrassing.
Yeah. So in other words, don't be surprised.
Don't be surprised.
Expect to be surprised.
Expect to be surprised. Plan to be surprised. Plan for the plan to be broken very quickly. It's, like they say in combat, every plan on paper works perfectly until you engage with the enemy. All bets are off.
That also reminds me of that Mike Tyson quote.
Everybody's tough until they get punched in the nose. That's right.
Everybody has a plan. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Right. And then it's like, what's your plan then?
Yeah, survival.
Yeah, very, very, very good. All right, so when's the time you had an unexpected twist or failure in your career, and how did it lead your success or growth on down the road?
You know, it's interesting. When I think about that question, I actually would count myself lucky to say I haven't really had what I would call failures, but I would point to what I originally thought was a failure. So many, many years ago, in fact, in a previous company, we devised a plan, if you will, to actually start creating a product that would help us do the work that we did in clinical research. Mm-hmm. We built a marketing strategy. We built a development strategy. We even hired hundreds of people to deliver this capability. And we had a very well-documented plan of action all the way to launch until one day, CEO, COO, CIO, I happened to be in the meeting, and two of the three looked up and said, but who's going to sell this? And we all kind of looked around the room, and I got selected as the person to put together the business development sales plan. And originally, as weird as it might sound, I actually remember going home and talking to my wife, who was in sales for many, many years, and said, what have I done wrong? Why would I not be in charge of strategy and infrastructure and architecture and security like I've always been, but supporting this product rather than me going out there and selling it? Mm-hmm. And she was the person that, well, first of all, I'll never forget, because we were on a dinner out together in Roswell, Georgia, and the tables had paper tablecloths, because they would just rip them off when you were done and put a new one on, right? So she started writing out this plan with me, you know, how to think about your market and what kind of salespeople do you, I mean, we had this whole plan. And what she included was thinking about, how do I use this as a launch pad for my next opportunity? And so that actually led to a significant amount of success in my career at that company. In fact, we had incredible growth of net new revenue. In fact, we exceeded our targets. And I would argue, looking back, that when I think about the people that I came in contact with at our customers, people that have worked for me or that I worked with during that period, it really became a launch point for my career, because it also expanded who I had connectivity to, particularly within the pharmaceutical industry. And I think most people would tell you there's not many people I don't know, or many groups that I haven't worked with. And part of it goes back to that. I originally thought it was, why me? And then not turned it into, but realized through planning and thinking that it actually was a real launch pad for me. So it says to me, and I often say to people, you know, don't expect your plan to be perfect, your path to be perfect, mm-hmm. but plan for taking an opportunity when that path does emerge for you.
Yeah, it sounds like it was something that got you really outside of your comfort zone too. In that moment.
Yes. I mean, I had been in sales. So the reason I was chosen.
Had been in sales.
The reason I was chosen, and it's not even on my CV anymore probably, but I started originally, my first job was at State Street Bank. I was basically an IT person working in a data center. And I was recruited to go work for MCI Telecom in sort of the early 90s. And so that exposed me to sales, which I was pretty good at. So I was able to leverage that to some extent, but I'd never led a plan, if you will, of how are we going to attack a multi-million-dollar marketplace with software that didn't exist at the time.
Yeah, on one hand, it seems like a far stretch from the IT world, but I think I remember the IT people back in the early 2000s, like you would put them in the corner or the back of the building, and they don't really speak our language. We don't want them in the meetings.
That's right.
And that's changed a lot. And now you have the rise of the CIO, and now that's really a promotion path to the C-suite in a lot of organizations. So it's changed. But having that sales perspective is got to be a pretty big advantage.
I think it did help. And I think to your point of moving from the back corner, and you're right. I mean, it was monolithic. Nobody understood it. You really weren't in the business of enablement. You were in the business of stuff just working. There's much more now resonance in the technology, but also the people and the approach. In fact, one of the things that we stress to folks in our group, in fact, each of my direct reports and the folks that work for them, I give them a book called The Real Business of IT. And it's all about stop talking technically. In fact, you can't buy it anymore. I may have cornered the market. I may have cornered the market on The Real Business of IT. I think it was a Gartner publication, so it was a limited run. But the point you're making was the point of the book, and the postulate was really stop being a technologist, and start being a business person that leverages technology.
Oh, nice. Yeah, you're going to command a lot more respect in the room if you walk in, you're talking about EBITDA versus a bunch of tech talk and
absolutely.
acronyms that only the IT people get.
In fact, I was on a call this morning with in fact, we're very proud. We just executed a CEO succession plan. So our former COO, Peyton Howell, is now our Chief Executive Officer. We couldn't be more excited about her in that role. But in a discussion with she and Jamie, our former CEO, and our Chief Medical Officer, our Chief Clinical Data Officer, we were talking about, and our Chief of Strategy, a lot of chiefs in that call. We were talking about this opportunity that's being worked on at MIT and an outside venture company. And toward the end of it was all about clinical viability and using AI for product discovery and how can you improve finding patients, all these kinds of things that we structurally deal with in our business. And at the very end, in fact, it was Chief Clinical Data Officer said, yeah, but how do you make money from it? And at the end of the day, and that wasn't in the non-altruistic way, but just to say, hey, this all sounds great, but at the end of the day, while we do this to bring patients better therapies and better drugs, there is an expectation that there will be a profit. Otherwise, we can't continue to do the work. And I think to your point, you have to show up first thinking about how do I make this successful as a business.
What telling story comes from the Chief Data Officer.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that's a real linchpin moment when you've got your executive team, no matter where they're coming from, they're all find that common financial barometer, not just how's that going to affect my group and my budget and my P&L. How's that going to do it for the whole organization?
Absolutely.
Start doing something right over there.
Yeah, that's
Congrats.
right. And let's be very, very fair. While we all love what we do, and again, it's about the work we do to bring those drugs to the market that are safe, that are efficacious, there has to be a profit. Otherwise, we can't continue to reinvest and work to do the development that we do for our customers.
Yeah, I would hope that all employees are thinking about that. And the sooner they can realize that in their career, I think the more success they'll have, the more respect they'll get inside the organization.
Completely agree.
So dialing back that clock for you, what is some of the advice you'd give your younger self or something new that you would tell that person to try?
Rogaine. I don't know that it
get
existed.
A refund.
I don't know that it
I'll have to get a refund too.
In the early days. Stop wearing more ball caps. I don't know. Believe it or not, it's about people and it's about connections. And what I have learned, and it really has become true, I would say, over the last 20 years of my career in this business, and I've officially crossed the threshold where clinical development, contract research is the longest I've had in my career, is building really positive professional relationships with folks, whether they're in your company, but also outside of your company. And I think where I see folks failing, particularly when they want to sort of succeed from where they are to something significantly differently, they've not built a network. They've not used the power of meeting new people, putting themselves in opportunities to participate in meetings that maybe they wouldn't normally, reaching outside of your own company, reaching outside of your comfort zone and introducing yourself to other folks in the industry, even if they're in a different industry. Perspective, relationship, work on those over time, which is, what's really nice about some of the social media, although I must admit I'm not a big social media user, but LinkedIn is reasonably good to do this with. But you have to build those relationships. It really does make a difference.
What's your advice for how someone should could get started in that world if they may just been so head down in their own career inside their own organization?
One is, talk to the senior-most person in your organization and find out what network they may have. And if you don't find it there, there's LinkedIn, there's Toastmasters, good gosh, go to your synagogue or your church, and ask, is there something I could participate in with someone there? Building that opportunity to go to, recruiting activities with your talent acquisition team, even attending conferences like the one here with Hexaware. Getting your exposure is critically important. And I think a lot of technology folks aren't as good at that. Got to get out there, go to some conferences, and not just excuse the term, the geeky conferences, but go to the ones that may feel a little awkward. You'll learn some great connectivity there.
So speaking of Hexaware, what's been the benefit of working with them?
I have to say they really understand the business we're in that sort of research. We don't do research, but the research and development arena for pharmaceuticals. Two, they have great exposure to our customers and to our competitors. And that's just about building the muscle. It's not about what somebody else is doing as much as it is building the muscle. And I think the other thing is there's a clear top-down leadership approach that really drives accountability all the way through project teams or relationship teams. And I think that's critically important. And I think also it's clear that they're driving a very collaborative operation, because rarely are you actually engaging with someone that you think they really don't want to be doing this. They really genuinely show up, and they show up professionally. And I think that says a lot about the leadership at Hexaware.
Gosh, it does. Yeah, working with people that want to be there, working with you on the project.
You buy people, you don't buy products, you don't buy companies, you buy people.
Yeah, nice.
And they really demonstrate that well.
So what's your parting thought for our listeners today? Take it anywhere you want.
I think, again, think about what you really want to accomplish and use the idea of where do I actually want to end up as a way to work back into, am I doing the things that really drive the behaviors and drive the activities that I need to accomplish to reach those goals? And I think I would also say finding a way to open your calendar so that you get more time to spend thinking about family, thinking about your job, thinking about the things that are important to you individually, whether it's going out here and playing golf or taking a tour of the winery like we did today that was put together. I think far too frequently people fill their calendars up to say they're busy and forget that they really need that time to think about sort of themselves and what's going on around themselves.
Yeah, I can remember growing up thinking, I need to be on my computer. I need, this is what work is. And then I would just no time for thinking about the bigger picture. Building relationships socially from a work perspective started to even felt like a waste of time. Sure. Like, is this work? Sure. But from that perspective, I really like what you're saying, because that might be the most important work you do, because your legacy is left through people and relationships.
Oh, absolutely. And going back to Hexaware, this is a great example, right? They've brought together a group of folks. Many of us are extremely different. We're from multiple industries, and yet when you sit down and have a lunch together, or you're having dinner, or you're just in the hallway, during a break, it's amazing to listen and pay attention to how much commonality there is in the challenges that we have, whether you're in banking or you're in security or you're in research like we are, or, data analytics. We're actually all really focused on similar challenges. And so back to that network connectivity, people and relationships, Hexaware is doing a really good job to bring us together here and really exposes the opportunity to learn from one another. And that's, we may never truly reconnect with each other again, but we'll all take away something and go, that talk about Scotch bonnets and hot peppers last night from Scott, was something I'll never forget, And he's going to buy some nachos that are ghost pepper nachos, and I'm sure he'll email me and say, why didn't you not tell me how hot they were?
Thank you for that.
That's right. That's right.
Jonathan, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you.